Hello everybody, I guess we are live. My name is Jakub. Welcome to a second online workshop during this week from us. You might have had a chance to check out Sebastian's workshop on Tuesday on CEST Pro. And today I will be talking about Pigments, and especially the Pigments modulation section, and how can it be used to produce evolving and dynamic sounds. Few words about me. My name is Jakub. I am an Arturia product specialist. I am also a music producer. And you might know me from some of the YouTube tutorials from us and some trade shows. Today we're going to be talking about modulations and having a closer look at how they can help us to create evolving sounds. And there are two reasons for this topic and the fact that I would like to talk about it. The first one is that when producing music, electronic music, we sometimes want to imitate the sounds of nature. And if you look at the sounds of the nature, their characteristics of those is that they are always moving, they're always evolving, they're always dynamic and never static. So actually, thanks to the modulators within the synthesis methods, we can imitate those type of characteristics of the sounds of nature, and because of that they can sound more interesting and be much more appealing to the listeners and to the viewers. So just so you know, the structure of this workshop is that I will break down some of the tracks, some of the sounds that come from Pigments that I have been working on recently, so we will have a chance to check out the modulations within different types of tracks, and then after that we will have a little Q&A section, so you will be able to ask some questions on the chat, and then I'll answer them at the end. You also need to know that Pigments is actually now available as a free trial for 3 months, so make sure to take advantage of that, check it out, and use it to its full potential. So let me show you the session right now. This track that I'm working on actually utilizes a few sounds. So there are drums, and there are bass, pad, and key sounds, and these come from Pigments. So all the melodies come from Pigments. So let me present you these sounds so we can check them out and listen where the modulation is happening within those. So this is the bass sound. With the drums. Okay, so you can hear easily that there is some sort of a filter modulation going on, but there is also a very interesting modulation on the wavetable engine that is utilized in that sound, and we will discover it just right now. After this sound there is a pad sound that sounds like this. And there is this nice swirling with the longer chords that you can hear, and this is also an effect of the modulation routing that is being utilized inside. So we will check how this is done as well. Let's listen to the drums and the bass maybe. And the last one is the key sounds, which is kind of a trancey, bringing that little nostalgia to the whole mix. And for this one, there is not so much going on within the sound itself over the time, but I will show you on the example of this sound how Pigments is equipped. Pigments modulation section is equipped with very cool tricks that you can use to modulate sounds, not only by the modulators but also within your movements of your hands and your MIDI controllers. So let me open up the first instance of Pigments with the bass sound. It looks like this. For those who do not know what Pigments is, let me just quickly talk about it. So what Pigments is, it's actually our flagship polyphonic software synthesizer. It's a very interesting and quite powerful instrument, and we've been working on it actually since day one, since '99, when we have joined the community of music makers, and it's an extract of all of the best things that we've been doing, software and hardware wise as well. So the way it works is that it's very nice and easy to learn, because its visual feedback always tells you what is going on and where you are. So basically, here we have the engine section. So there are two engines available at your disposal at the same time. Within each engine, you can pick to work with different synthesis creation methods. So you have a wavetable engine with different wavetables. You have a classic analog virtual engine, which I'm using here. And you also have the sampling and the granular engines, which are also very cool. And it's very easy to navigate between those. You can switch them off in that way. So it's very easy to break down your sounds. Next up, there is a filter section here. So this is where the sound is actually being created. We go to the filter section here. There are two filters, and they have multiple modes, as you can see. Some come from V collection instruments, some come from the other types of synthesis, such as low pass gate, that comes originally from the West Coast synthesis. And there are two filters, and you can work with those at the same time. You can route the engines to the filter 2 or filter 1, or both of them at the same time. And below this, what you see here is actually the modulation row. So this is the very important section that we will be focusing on, and it contains all the mod sources that are available within Pigments. So here you create the routings actually between the mod sources and mod destinations. So here you have stuff like LFOs, envelopes, functions, and other mod sources. And they also give you a very cool feedback. If you look closely, when I put my mouse on a filter, I can see that something is modulating it first, because there is this little dot moving on the contour of the knob. So this is the first indicator that the sound is moving, outside of the fact that we can see it here. But also when I click on it, I can see that some of the mod sources are grayed out and some of them are standing out. And this is the indication of the fact that these two, the function 1 and function 2 are actually doing something to the filter. So again, a very cool way to sort of navigate and know where you are and know what is happening within the preset. And look, if I go here and select function 1 or 2 within the modulation row, I also get an indication on the filter cutoff. There is an amount of modulation that you can see on the contour of the knob. So there is this nice interaction between the mod sources and mod destinations when trying to break down tracks or see what's going on in a preset to learn something and then apply it to your own sound. So then below the modulation row, we get the envelopes, LFOs and functions, randoms and combinates, which are actually the modulators. And here we can see all the details of the envelopes. So there are 3 envelopes that you can use. There are 3 LFOs, 3 functions, 3 randoms, and 3 combinates. So today we're gonna be focusing on envelopes, LFOs, and functions. I'll get back to it soon. I just wanted to show you that Pigments is actually an all-in-one solution, because if you switch the site, the view to the effects, now you see that Pigments, it's not just a sound creation tool, but also it's equipped with great effects. So we get a bus A and bus B and bus and the third bus. So you have 9 effects that you can use at the same time. You can also sequence your music and use the arpeggiator within Pigments. So as you can see, it's an all-in-one solution tool that is available now as a free trial. So make sure to check it out even right now. So I'll just go straight back to the breakdown of the tracks and the sound. So this is the first bass sound. And I'll show you which modulations are happening here and why we should pay attention to what the result of those modulation is. So first off, let me break down the sound. So I'll turn off the filters, and now I'm just left with the engines. So now we don't hear anything. Again, a very cool way to break down your music, because you can just do it step by step, going back to the fundamentals of the sound. So here again, we hear that one part of this sound is coming from the wavetable, and this is a wavetable called bass morph. You can easily pick a lot of different wavetables to work with, and what I like about this particular source within this sound is that, as you probably hear, this is quite of a 303-ish type of bass line, and another part of this engine is sounding much more classical. I'll switch on the filter. Now you probably hear that it's very classic, but I wanted to use this one because I wanted to give this 303 type of sound something more. I wanted it to have a modern twist. So what Wavetable is doing, actually, it's adding this very cool plucky attack sound. So to me, thanks to this, it sounds a bit more like acoustic bass. So if you listen closely, it gives it this snappiness, this very aggressive attack at the beginning, and then that's why it's quite interesting. So the first thing that I want you to know about this wavetable engine within this sound is that there is a modulation going on here, and again, how do I know that something is modulated here? I look at frequency modulation tab and I see that this knob, there is something on the contour that is moving, and actually, again, this is telling me that this knob is being modulated. And when I go and put my mouse on it, I see that the function 1 and function 3 might be doing something to it, because it's highlighted in the modulation row. So again, I go here and I see, okay, the mod source function 3 is modulating wavetable 1 FM amount. And then when I am here, I again get a visual indication to know that actually this source is modulating this destination. So now, why don't we just go to function 3 and see what it is doing to this sound. So while we hear what functions are, they are actually a very cool way to combine the characteristics of LFOs and envelopes, which I'll explain in a second. But basically, you can draw your own shape, and this one actually looks like a Christmas tree, or like a flattened triangle. And I can see that as the curve is going up, the modulation is increasing on this parameter. And I used it because I wanted this wavetable to get distorted a little bit, but I didn't want it to use the distortion. So the FM modulation seemed a very cool way to go around that, and thanks to this function modulating this parameter, I achieved that effect. So again, we can hear this very easily. Let me switch on the filter again. You can hear at particular moments when this frequency modulation is increasing because of the function, and then it creates that very harsh and rich in harmonics type of sound. So that's the one thing. The second thing, when it comes to modulation in this sound, it's about the filters. But before I go there, let me just quickly come back and explain envelopes, LFOs, and functions. So what envelopes are, for those who do not know and did not have a chance to get into that before, an envelope is a device or a tool in the signal path that allows you to change the behavior and nature of the sound over time. So basically, for example, in a classic way, you would apply envelope to the volume amplitude of the synthesizer. And thanks to this, you get control over how the volume behaves over the time. So for example, attack parameter, it would allow you to, it actually determines the time that is needed for the volume to reach its maximum level. Then we get to the decay phase, which is another parameter. that's in the envelope. So the decay actually determines the point at which the volume will stop after reaching the maximum peak, and then the sustain determines the amount of time that the volume will stay at this particular level, and then the release time will actually determine whether the fade out of the sound will be short or long after you release the key or a trigger. So envelopes, they always work with the trigger. So whenever you trigger a note, they start to work and target and change the behavior of the parameter that they are connected to. So they are a classic way. They are this is like a classic way to use them and within the modulations. So LFOs are quite different. The first thing that makes them different to envelopes is that they are actually constantly moving. So LFO is actually an oscillator, but an oscillator that moves very, very slowly. It's a low frequency oscillator, and it moves very, very slowly, and it's in constant movement, right? So it doesn't need a trigger, just like an envelope, and it also doesn't have an ADSR type of structure. So there are no points that will determine the behavior of the mod source. But instead, you can select various waveforms, just like you can do here, and then you can determine the rate of the LFO. So if we look closely at the cutoff, we can see that I put my mouse on the cutoff filter 2, and I see that LFO2 is modulating it actually. So it's moving very slowly and giving that very slow modulation that is visible here. And lastly, functions, they are some sort of a way to combine LFOs and envelopes, and you can even see that you can pick between different LFOs and envelopes styles within the functions. So let's have a look at the function number 1, because it's crucial within this sound. So again, if I go to the cutoff knob and I put my mouse on it, I see that there is a function 1 that is controlling it. And if I go here, I see that function 1 is controlling this filter. If I turn it off, I see and hear the difference in the sound, right? So now it's quite more round and more dull and not so aggressive and not so plucky and rhythmic. And the reason is because the function number 1, which is set to this shape, which has a very sharp and short attack, actually causes the filter to act in this very rhythmical and aggressive way. So whenever there is a trigger, whenever there is a note in my sequence, the function is acting on the filter, causing it to sound very rhythmic and aggressive and more plucky with much more transient information. And this is important. This is what I need, because I want this sound to work together with the drums and create a nice groove. So let me play it right now. If I turn it off, you can hear the difference in the behavior of that sound. The filter is acting differently. It doesn't dance with the drums. If you listen to the snare and the notes that are being triggered from the pattern, and they give a trigger to the function as well, it just causes the different behavior that is very, very cool, and just creates a movement and gives this pattern a bit of much more dynamics. So together with the wavetable engine, it sounds like this. And we can hear easily how the sound is evolving over the time. It's quite of a it's quite of a simple pattern, but thanks to the fact that the FM frequency modulation is slowly moving across time, and that the fact that functions are also working on the filter, it makes it quite interesting. There is another function that is affecting the cutoff here. So actually there are two functions that are working on the same sound, and each function plays a different role. So the function number 1 gives us this plucky, transient type of effect on the cutoff and resonance, which is set to quite of a high amount. And then there is another function, which again I can easily find, because when I put my mouse here, I can see the function 1. I can see that the function 1 is also connected to it. So if I go here, I see that, okay, it is actually causing the modulation. If I turn it off, I can see that this ring around the knob is grayed out. So if I turn it on, it's colorful again. So if we go to function 2, we see that this function plays a different role. It actually looks like a triangle that is flattened from the left and changed from the right side as well, and it's just moving very slowly at this rate, which is 4 bars for the full cycle, and it's just opening up the filter. It goes down, the filter is closing down, and then again it's opening up. So together with the function 1, it just brings a lot of life to this filtered sound. So if we turn it off, both of those, we can hear that the sound is losing a lot of interesting movement. So let me turn it on again and put the drums on. Okay, so that was the first type of sound. The second sound is the pad sound, and let me play you again. So now we're gonna move to the pad sound, and we're gonna see what is causing this interesting swirling inside of this pattern, because this utilizes a different method, a different type of modulation. It's also based on the functions, but we will see how we can target different sources, not only the cutoff filter or the parameters connected to the engines, to see how to make a cool and interesting evolving effect. So let's check out this sound in Pigments. Let me change it to okay, so this is actually how it looks. Let me make it a bit bigger. Okay, so this sound, again, let's listen. We can hear this nice swirling in the panning. If you guys listen on the headphones, you can easily hear this. So let's break down this sound right now to see what is causing this. I can easily turn off each of the module again to make the sound, to leave just the foundation of the sound. So just the engine 1. Maybe first thing we can do is turn off the effects, so we just hear the pure sound. So this sound uses engine 1 and engine 2, and they are both utilizing the analog engine and analog synthesis method. And if you look closely, it's just very simple. The first one is using 3 squares with a little bit of the pulse width amount applied, and the second one is quite similar. It uses a square and 2 sawtooth shapes. And if we go back to the analog, the first engine, we also see that there is a little movement in the semitones, and the reason for it is that the sound sounds a bit more wide because of that. If there is a little shift in pitch between different oscillators, we can actually achieve a nice effect of widening up the sound. And now I would like to know what is actually modulating the fine parameters for oscillator 2 and 3 in the engine number 1. And if I just click, not click, if I go and put my mouse on it, I can see that it's LFO number 1 in the modulation row. Again, here this is the modulation row where we can find all the mod sources that are modulating the sound. So if I go and put my mouse on LFO number 1, I can see all the places where this LFO is working. So it shows me the yellow type of indication on the contour of the knobs, and now I know that actually it is the LFO number 1 causing those modulations. And the modulations for the semitones, for the fine parameters, they should be small, because if we go with too much amount, we will sort of lose the cool aspect of that sound. So we can turn it off now as well to make the sound even more simple. Again, engine number 2. And what is also happening, you probably might notice, the filters, they are equipped with the panning knob. So if I turn off the filters, we can still hear that there is a panning going on here. And if we look closely at the modulation row, we can see that it is LFO2 that is causing this change of the panning within both channels number left and right. If I turn it up, we are left with a very simple sound. So you guys can see that it's actually not very complex. It's just 2 engines working with a filter that has an interesting modulation on its panning on the output between the left and right channel. So another cool thing that is happening here, if we go to the LFO2 and bring back the modulation for the panning, we can see that the rate of the LFO that is causing this, the speeding up of that is actually modulated as well. So it's also very cool to remember that Pigments not only delivers a lot of good modulation sources, but it also makes it easy to create some interaction between those and make them work with each other. So modulating the modulation source is also very easy to do, and I'll show you in a second how it's done and how to do it. So if we go back to this look, we can see that LFO is modulating panning of both filters, and we can also see that something is changing the rate of the LFO. The swirling effect that we hear is caused by something else. And if I just put my mouse on the rate knob, I can see that function 1 is being highlighted again. So if we go to function 1, I can see, well, LFO2 rate as the destination. If I turn it off, the swirling between the left and right channel of the filter is still happening, but it's happening at a constant rate. So therefore there is a movement, but it's kind of if I can say static movement. It doesn't change its character over the time, and to be more precise, it doesn't change its rate over the time and the speed that it's working with. So if I just select the LFO rate, activate the destination again, we can see that this function, which I got here, it just left next to the LFO tab, functions tab, it's here. So I see the function 1 is working with that sort of triangle shape, and the details are the rate behavior is 4 beats, so we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 bars actually, and we can, the cool thing about functions is that we can change the behavior of the shape We can manipulate that. We can create, I think it's up to 64 points. You also get a presets list. So for example, you can bring some cool other shapes like those. If you would like to go back to some other ones that you liked before, there is the undo function here. And now we are back with the original shape. And I just want to increase the maximum position of that point, because it's gonna make the swirling even much more emphasized. So if we go back now to the other routings and activate the LFO modulation of the engine number 1 fine tuning and bring back the filters, we can listen again with all the other modules being engaged now. And if I lower this point, we can hear that the swirling has a smaller effect, and that's because the function 1 is modulating the rate of the LFO2 with the smaller amount. So I just want to increase it like this, and I think that will be fine. This is the desired position. And the way it works is that you probably notice that if we go and check the actual pattern of that sound, you probably hear that the swirling arises when we see the longer chord playing, right? With the short chords, it's not really that much emphasized that much. The reason is that the function is being retriggered every time a new trigger. The function is reset every time a new trigger comes in, and the trigger here is the gate source, is the keyboard. As you can see, you can also set different types of gate sources for the function. And what is really cool, as I mentioned before, the functions, they are sort of connecting the characteristics of envelopes and LFOs. And if I go here and set the envelope mode for the function, now I can actually loop some of the fragments of that function. So the way it works is that if I create a point here and I have the maximum point here, every time that the longer chord will come in and actually leave the gate open for quite of a longer time, this position will be looped, as you can see. And here I also can change the curve. So if I start the chord again, you can see that this position is being looped. So if I like a particular moment of the function, and if I like what it's doing to its destination, I can easily just find this little element, little area of the function and loop it if I want to create even more interesting type of modulation. I'll go back to the LFO2. And the possibilities, they do not end here. You know, what else we could do is that we could go to function 3 and, for example, assign it to the rate of, if we go to function 3 here, we can just assign it, function 1, we can assign the rate of the function 1 to function 3. So now the function 3 will behave on the rate of the function 1, which is modulating the rate of the LFO that is acting on the panning of the filters. We can play around with the shape of that function to give us even better effects. Another thing that I wanted to mention about functions is that there is a nice regen function feature built in within the function, which actually changes the shape of the function. So if you just turn it on with your mouse, it's actually randomly changing the position of the points and their amplitude. If you would like to go back, as always, you can just click the undo button and go back to the original view. So now we can hear that the function 3 is, with this shape, it's modulating the rate of the function number 1, which we can see here again. So that's the trick with this sound. So again, basically this is a very simple sound with 2 engines, utilizing the analog synthesis creation method, 6 oscillators with square and sawtooth waveforms, 2 filters. The first one is the phasor type, which basically creates these negative poles here, and its cutoff is actually modulated by envelope 2 that we can see here, and envelope 3, and it just creates that nice sweeping effect. Filter 2, on the other hand, is a classic multimode filter with low pass type set to 100 Hz, and I can see that function 2 is working on it. Again, this is so easy to sort of break down your tracks and see what is happening where within the modulations. I remember I was using so many different synths, and I still use those, and whenever I would find a nice sound, I would like to learn it. I wanted to try and see what is happening there and what is causing all those effects. And I was a lot of time just frustrated because I couldn't find the sources, the modulations, the destinations, and I didn't know how to recreate it, and I couldn't learn. So with Pigments, it's just so easy, and I just say this because I want to highlight the fact that it's an amazing educational tool as well. You get even built-in tutorials into that. So if you go to the Pigments menu, drop-down menu, you unfold it, and then you can save your presets, import them or export them, but you also get the tutorials. So if you unfold the tutorials and you would like to learn something more about Pigments, you can just explore some of those. There's actually a tutorial on the modulations, on the filters, granular synthesis engine as well. We will be adding much more of those in the near future. But yeah, just wanted to highlight that thanks to the visual feedback of everything that is actually laid out on the panel, it's very easy and very cool to learn and know where you are and what you stand on. And sometimes you might hear that it's sound, it's all about the sound because we are making music, but actually the visual feedback helps out because it doesn't replace the sound. It just becomes a very good company of it, and those working together on your senses, they are just bringing that better and much more rich experience of making music and learning how to make music. And I wanted to address everyone that actually plays presets and makes sounds on their own, because the first one, the bass sound that I have played before, this one I've made it on my own because I was just learning how to do that within Pigments based on the visual feedback of what was happening, and then it was just so easy to make my own sound, so it really doesn't take that much to learn that. But on the other hand, with this sound that I was just showing you, it was just so cool and so amazing, and I found it in the browser and just wanted to use it because it sort of reflected of what I wanted to do and use. And you just need to know that all of these sounds are very cool and it's very easy to find them. All you have to do is just go to browser, and if you would like to find some evolving sounds as the ones that we are working with today, all you have to do is just use the filters, and it's so easy to do that. Like, for example, I can just pick evolving, I can pick the pad, and here our sound is here, and then the fun part starts. So the original, let's go back to the original form and hear how it sounds. Very cool, very dreamy. So the last thing that I wanted to show you is that key sound, which brings a little bit of the nostalgia to the whole thing. Just adding a little flavor on top of the bass and pads. And let me just explain what I've done here, because it will show you a very cool trick of what is possible within Pigments. And as you have seen, there is a modulation section and there is a modulation row that basically highlights all of the mod sources, but there are some few hidden tricks built in that modulation row and modulation section that will allow you to quickly bounce some ideas back and forth between different mod sources. So for example, you might say that, okay, I found these cool modulations for a particular, for the particular sound. Okay, our sound is here. Let's go back to the view. Let's make it a bit bigger for you guys to see the details. And trigger it right now. Okay, so the feature that I wanted to show you here is called Reassign. So let me just go back to the original sound. It's so easy to find those, by the way. You just type the name or browse by the filters. Okay, so this is the original sound. And what I was checking were the macros, because they are a very cool way to assign a lot of different parameters to just one knob, and there are 4 of those macros, and then you can use them when performing live to just you know, create drastic changes in a very fast way. But what I wanted to do here is I wanted to check what is actually contained within those, and I can see that the macro 3, which is called Twisted Harmonic, has a wavetable phase modulation amount and wavetable to wave folding. And I just wanted to show you a very cool way to do some tricks. So for example, let's say I also want to assign the effects to this macro. So all I have to do is, okay, so yeah, okay, so they are here, macro 4. And what I want to do, what I wanted to show you is how we can easily reassign those destinations to something else. So let's look at what's going on with that little arrow here. So if I click this, now I have a menu that's unfolded, and I see there is an option called Reassign All To, and this basically allows me to reassign all those destination modulation destinations to another source. And in my case, I would like to reassign them to mod wheel. And the reason is that I have a little control connected here, as you can see. It's the original key step. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go to the modulation row now and see what is being modulated by the mod wheel. So it's there are 2 parameters from the wavetable 1 and 2, and dry wet parameters of 2 effects, which is chorus and delay. So now if I go to channel number 2 and I trigger this, you can actually hear that with the movements on the touch strip, I'm actually changing the nature of that sound. So we can make it even cooler. For example, I would like to control the volume of both of those engines with the mod wheel as well. So all I have to do, again, very easy to assign anything. So I go to the mod wheel, I put the volume to the 0 position, and then I just set the modulation by actually touching the contour and actually setting the amount in that way. And then I want to do the same thing for volume of the other engine, and again just touching the contour and creating the amount. So now if we play the sound, you hear that I can easily introduce this sound with the touch strip of the key step, and this would work for any type of controller, and it will allow us to do some cool arrangements. We can, for example, try to introduce some of these sounds now again. So the bass playing with the drums, again creating that nice interaction of the snappiness of the function 1 acting on the filter and resonance. And now I am introducing the sound of Pigments with the slider and modulating dry and wet parameters of 2 effects at the same time. And maybe we can create some little arrangements. Introducing more sounds again. Yeah, so these are the sounds. Basically, I think we've covered most of the topics that I wanted to talk about. Again, I would like to mention that modulations are important because they can provide a necessary sense of movement within our sounds. And again, if we try to make our sounds interesting and cool, we just have to look at the natural sounds that are surrounding us every day. If you hear the whistle of the if you hear the wind blowing outside, it's never static, it's always moving. If you hear a car coming, approaching you from the distance, the sound is changing as it's getting closer to you. So I assure you, if you will make your sounds evolving and dynamic, everyone will be interested and everyone will be intrigued by those. And then how to make that? How to make those sounds sounding dynamic, non-static? Well, we need to modulate the aspects that are building those sounds. And I cannot think of a better device to do that than Pigments. And especially because it just gives you this very cool visual feedback of everything that is happening. And it's just so easy to modulate anything within that. And as you could see, it's not only envelopes, not only LFOs, but also functions, which bring the modulation experience to another level, really. And you can do it all within Pigments. Almost all of the parameters are possible to modulate. If you guys have any MPE equipped controllers, you can use Pigments because it is equipped with that technology as well. So the expressiveness of those modulations will be enhanced even more. So I guess that's it. Maybe you guys have some questions. I will try to have a look at those now and answer them. Okay, so the first question Is it possible to configure audio routing from different engines to separate audio channels in Ableton? No, unfortunately not. The engines are mixed and go into the filter routing. So at the moment there is no way to separate them. But you know, we are always evolving our products, and Pigments is a product that will be evolving definitely in the future. So maybe in the future. Okay, another question. Will it be possible to create more than 3 LFOs / envelopes in the future? So yeah, functions actually can turn into envelopes or LFOs, and the central strip of the modulation is essential in that aspect, in that regard. And yeah, any changes can be quite dramatic, and yeah, you should be careful about what remains there. So okay, that's this one. Again, another question. Can you please show the random modulation section? Yes, of course. So let me just show you this now. Okay. Yeah, so the random section, well, basically these are function generators, but they are quite similar to LFOs as well, because as you can see, they're in the constant movement. There are 3 different types of those: Turing, sample and hold, and binary. And within the random function generators, for example, if you go to sample and hold one, you get few parameters, so you can determine the source that actually generates the wave. So it could be all of those things. I mean, the possibilities are quite big. Also, you can determine the rise and fall of that waveform. So basically, the beginning of it and the ending of it will be smoothed out as the parameters go up. So if we go to the maximum positions, it's basically making the waveform being flat. If we go back again, it's a classic sample and hold waveform. You also have a way to change the rate, and you can change the rate either in hertz, so you can go to like very fast, crazy type of rates, but also you can work with binary, triplets, and dotted time divisions. Okay, another one. The drums comes from Pigments too? No, they don't. These are some samples that I have found. But the cool thing about Pigments now is that actually with the sample engine, you can utilize your own samples, and you can put different type of sounds into it. So drums as well. So yeah, you can make some drum sounds. Actually, there's a lot of presets that utilize the drums in that engine. So you can check that out and have a look on your own. Yeah, now it's a 3-month free trial, so it's the best moment to do that. Okay, another one. Please show the MIDI learn assignment again with the screen visible. Okay, so as I assumed, you would like to see how to connect the mod source with the Multidestination. So it's very easy. So again, here there is a modulation row, and right now I see that function number 2 is not busy, it's not working. So I go inside of that, and that decision and that moment of going inside of that, it enables all of the possible parameters to be assigned to it. So for example, there is a filter, and all I have to do is go to that filter, grab its counter, and you can see that if you're gonna move your mouse a little above that knob, it will turn into that, it'll bring you that lightning circle around it and change the normal mouse arrow into that double mouse arrow with the arrow up and down. So, and then you can just easily set create the routing and set the amount. So it could be with a filter, it can be either negative or positive, for example. And it works the same for all of those. So if I go to the filter mix output, if I go to frequency modulation, it's just as simple, very easy and straightforward. And once you do the routing, you have all of those you have all of that information here. So again, it's very easy to navigate. It's very easy to know what is happening within your pattern, within your sound. Okay, let's check some more if there are any. Yes, there are. Could you explain differences between couple different gate sources and envelope LFO function sections? Yeah, of course. So if we go to the LFO, for example, section, and there is a let's go to functions. So yeah, gate source within the function. There is quite of a few to choose from, and basically this will determine what is giving the trigger for the function to actually start cycling from the beginning, from the left to the right. So if it's mono keyboard, it will re-trigger every time I press a key, or if the piano roll will play with the notes inside. So if I set it to LFO, it will be actually the LFO number 1 that will be causing the trigger. And now we can actually see what is happening with in this section of the function. It's constantly moving at a pretty fast rate, because I've set its gate source to LFO1, and if I go to LFO1, I see that it's moving with a pretty fast rate. And if I slow it down and come back to function, now I can see that the function can actually perform a whole cycle, because the rate of the LFO has been slowed down. And again, if I change it to the keyboard, it will re-trigger every time I press a key. So now I'm pressing a key, as you can see, and it's being re-triggered. Another question, this one is for the the granular engine, sample engine. So the question is, can the sample engine be used to load a sample and change the pitch using the keyboard without changing the sound? No, unfortunately, there is no time stretch algorithm at the moment. But you can manipulate the pitch of every sample with the granular engine. So if you activate it here, let me try to do something. Maybe find a different sound. Marimba. Oh, let's just start again. We go here. To Marimba 1. And here we can navigate the sample at a fixed rate at any pitch using a ramp on the sample start. So if you go to if you explore these parameters within the granular engine, you can easily try to imitate that sort of effect. Okay, another question. What is actually Combinate doing? That's a good one. So, well, a Combinate is a interesting way to manipulate the shape of the modulation source. So, for example, let me go back to, maybe let's go back to the other sound. It will be easier to highlight it there. So if we go back to the bass sound, let me just. Alright, we're back with the bass sound. So if we go here and, for example, I would like to use the remap type of the combinate one to change the nature and the behavior of LFO2. So if I pick up the source, I go to LFO2, and now in the combinate I can see that it's showing me the shape of the LFO2, and here I have this X and Y axis, which allows me to produce various points, and you can see how the implementation of those points, how this action is causing the shape of the LFO1 to change, and then to change all the sound of the parameters that are assigned to LFO2 as the mod destinations. So basically, this is a very cool way to manipulate your mod sources. Okay, so I think we are fine. It's exactly 7 right now. Thank you all for staying with us. We will be doing more of those in the upcoming weeks. We will be talking about our audio range and other products as well. Let us know which product would you like to see during those live workshops. And yeah, make sure to explore Pigments and its modulation capabilities, because this is quite of a special thing. And once you start using it, you will see how beneficial your music, how many benefits it can bring to your music and your productions. And just to remind you all again, it's actually available for free as a trial for 3 months. So make sure to check out the YouTube description of this live stream. And thank you again all very much. Stay safe, stay making music, and we see you guys soon next week. Thank you very much.